How you doing? It's the Butcher here, and I'm back again today with my fourth Abattior of Zir build, this time for the Druid class. So we are going to be running for our Druid a Pulverize Druid build. And now, a couple things that I just kind of want to start out with. So it's no secret that Druid is, pretty much unanimously the weakest class this season. Unfortunately, it was very strong last season, but this season, not so much. Kind of the two builds that are going around, the most popular that I see people want to take in the Abattior of Zir is the Shred build, because of the double dip that you'll probably be able to, that people are speculating you'll be able to get with the Tears of Blood glyph. However, I created this Pulverize build. I've tried that build and I don't like it that much, quite honestly. It's very clunky. It's very weird. So I came up with this Pulverize build, and it kind of just clears rooms. And I kind of push this thing to its max, and I think it can be, somewhat competitive. But if I'm being frankly honest with you, this is probably the weakest out of my 5 builds that I'm making, one for each class. And that is mainly just because, honestly, Druid, I think, is lagging a decent amount behind. Don't want to really be a downer to start the video, but wanted to be kind of upfront against about that. So getting into the build. So there's kind of a couple things we need to solve for with the Pulverize build. One of the things that people complain about is single target. So I kind of found ways around that I'll go over. Another thing people complain about is movement speed, and another thing people complain about is resource generation, or spirit generation, I should say. So kind of found a way around all of those. So just to go through, and I'll get to all those and how my workaround for them. This is the only build that I'm actually, if you see my other builds, you know I have some uber uniques. I have this Shaco singing down here. This is the only build I'm using no uber uniques on. I'm using 1, 2, 3 regular uniques, but that's it. And now the reason being is because if we put this on, and this is how I originally want to run it, just like this, we will gain, obviously, all the benefits of a Shaco, which are incredible. But what we lose is we lose the ability to add more total armor, and we lose the ability to get disobedience. So I kind of looked at doing a couple different things. So I looked at taking off the Tibalt's Will here, but we really need this for resource gen and the way we're using this for single targets. So it wasn't realistic. I looked at taking off the Banished Lord's Talisman because we already had a lot of different ways to overpower. However, the overpower you get with crits is just so much significantly more with this that we really need it. So then it kind of left me a choice between the Insatiable Fury and the Shaco. And I can get, so one is we're using all Werebear skills. We have Cyclone armor here, but we're actually not pressing it, and I'll explain that. But we're using all Werebear skills, so we're only missing out on +1 rank to those skills by not using the Shaco and using this instead of a normal chest piece. And we are gaining, obviously, just insane amounts of total armor. We would probably be able, with Disobedience, to hit the cap anyway, but we are getting a ton of overpower damage, physical damage, and then we also have some DR damage all fortified. And I think that's more valuable than that kind of +1 rank and the other things Shaco has to offer. And it also keeps us in Werebear form at all times, and we need that to keep our armor up and for one of our kind of passive abilities to overpower. So I think it made the most sense going with the regular helmet and throwing on Disobedience. After kind of my testing and playing around with it, this is the build I settled on here. Okay, so first thing, I'm going to go through the skill tree, then I'm going to do the spirit boons, then the vampiric powers, and then the gear, and then I will be showing some, what do I have here? I think I have a tier 97 Nightmare Dungeon. I know it's not a tier 100, but one, I don't feel like wasting more sigil dots because I still can't believe you can't just craft a tier 100. And two, this is my class with the least leveled up glyphs at the moment. I'm trying to get these videos out before the event starts. So it will kind of compensate for the actual power level that we would be getting. And I am in the training room here because there is one thing I would want to show you guys at the end of kind of this run through here. So let's go over the skill tree quick, and this will all be on d4builds.dg. Right in the description, I'll have the build link. And that will also include the full Paragon board with the new Tears of Blood glyph in there as well, and where I'm putting it. So as you can see, we're obviously getting the boost from our chess piece to the way rare skills, but we're taking Maul into Enhanced, and we're not really using that much at all. But then we're going down into Pulverize, and we are taking that into Primal. And right here, Enhanced Pulverize is one of the ways we're going to overpower. We're taking 1 into Heart of the Wild to get to 3 of Wild Impulses. We're taking 3 into Predatory Instinct, and we're taking 3 into Iron Fur. We are taking 3 into Ancestral Fortitude for the non-physical resist. We're actually not taking Vigilance, which I normally do here. We are taking Cyclone Armor, and we're taking that into Preserving, but we're actually never going to hit this. We're using this for the passive benefit because there's really nothing else better to use here, and getting 10% non-physical damage reduction is great, and then having that increase to 30 for 2 seconds every 10 seconds is very nice as well too. Then we're taking Debilitating Roar, and we're taking that into Debilitating Roar to slow enemies. This is one of the best defensive skills in the entire game. It reduces nearby enemies' damage dealt by 70% for 4 seconds, which is pretty nutty. We're using 0 companion skills. The other thing that I have tried and went back and forth with the Cyclone Armor is taking Ravens for this right here for the 8% crit strike chance for 6 seconds after enemies are hit by Ravens. And I also took that down into, into this one for 2 additional Ravens. However, I kind of settled on the DR because of Cyclone Armor, because we actually don't have a lot of DR built into this build, unfortunately, but we do have a big health pool, and we're able to heal up quite easily. So it's not the end of the world, but that's why I'm going with that instead of the Ravens. But you can do that if you choose to. Down here, we're using 2 points into Mending, 3 into Provocation, and that is going to be our second way we are going to be able to overpower. And then we have Trample, and we're taking that into Savage Trample for the Spirit regen. We have 3 into Crushing Earth, 3 into Safeguard, 3 into Stone Guard. We are taking 3 into Circle of Life, 3 into Natural Disaster, 3 into Defiance, and then we're taking Grizzly Rage all the way down to Supreme Grizzly Rage. See a lot of people not using this on their Pulverized Druid, and I think this helps a lot. One, because like I said, we don't get a lot of DR, and it's because there's huge amounts of DR, and it also gives us a big damage increase. So I actually think Grizzly Rage works great on this, and we are able to get that duration between our Spirit Boon and one of our aspects up to 17.5, and then we can, while we're going through mobs, we can extend that by 5 seconds as long as we get 5 kills in that time, which we do essentially every single time unless there's no enemies around us. So the uptime on this is fantastic with what we're using with it. We're also using one of our Vampiric powers to get this cooldown down as well. Finally, our key passive here, we have Ursunine Strength, and this is going to give us a big increase to maximum life. But more importantly, while healthy, we deal 25% increased damage, and even more importantly, 25% increase overpowered damage, because that is going to be our main damage source. This is an overpowered build. So you've probably counted those 2 ways we've overpowered so far. We have a third way of overpowering with just the 3% critical or overpower chance you get. And then in our Spirit Boons here, we'll start at the bottom. We have Obsidian Slam, so every 20th kill with your next Earth skill, and we are turning Pulverize into an Earth skill, will overpower. So that's another way we're able to overpower. And then we're taking Calamity. We are taking Iron Feather, and we're taking Avian Wrath. I've kind of gone back and forth between this and Sight Talons. They feel about equal, so you can pick either. And then finally, we're taking Wariness for some DR from Elites. Like I said, we don't have the most DR on this build. And now for the Vampiric powers. This is going to be, what is that? We have the 3% normal chance. We have 2 in our skill tree. We have 1 in our Spirit Boons. So this is going to be our 5th way to overpower is Blood Boil. And this lets us overpower every 20 seconds. We're taking Anticipation to get the cooldown of Grizzly Rage down. We're taking Metamorphosis. I'll come back to this in a second. Taking Prey in the Weak. and we're taking Sanguine Brace for the fortify, and even better, the crit chance when we are fortified. So one of the real keys here, and what I did to really push this build, was I leveled up every single other thing here, and I got all of them unlocked before Metamorphosis to level 3, so that way when I got Metamorphosis, I could keep it on level 1. And the reason for that is I'm able to get the benefits of Tibalt's Will every 2 seconds instead of every 4 if we had it all the way leveled up. It kind of stinks that you can't de-level, so if you do have this leveled all the way up, it won't kill the build, but this does help a lot, specifically for that spirit regen and that single target to keep the attacks coming. So that is one way I kind of solved for one of the issues of this build, was keeping this at level 1. So another thing to be noted, I guess, is so when we do enter Grizzly Rage, it does grant us Unstoppable for 6 seconds, so we won't be able to use Tibalt's Will during that time, but you'll see during the gameplay, that is where Trample is going to come in handy, because we are able to use Trample during that time to generate Spirit, and then once the Unstoppable from Grizzly Rage wears off, we're able to use our Meta Dash to gain, obviously, more Spirit, and then it's very important that you have boots with +3 evade charges, so you're able to constantly keep this up. So now finally we have the gear, and so like I said, we are actually running a normal helmet. We want total armor, max life, cooldown reduction. For the last one, I have basic skill attack speed. That's definitely not what you want. I would probably lean in favor of max spirit, I think. You can really go with anything else there. But I would lean in favor of probably max spirit, but that's not that important, the 4th affix on your helmet. And then we're running disobedience on there. We actually end up getting crazy armor, like too much, but it's the only way we can really do it. But we get up to, I think we get up to like 19,000 armor, which is way past the cap, but it's the only way we're able to get up to the cap. So then we're using, like I said, the Satiable Fury chest piece. Then we are using Ursinine Horror on our gloves to turn Pulverize into an Earth skill to benefit from the Spirit boon, and then a bunch of things in the Paragon board as well too, and then things like critical strike damage with Earth skills like you see there. However, I would probably want overpower damage there instead, I think, but critical strike damage Earth skills isn't bad, but you definitely want critical strike chance, attack speed, and ranks of Pulverize. And for our pants, obviously, like I mentioned before, Tibalt's Will. For this, definitely look for something that has the 40% just to get as much increase as you can, or at least as close to 40% as possible. For our boots, we're using Ghostwalker, and combined with the movement speed we get in here, plus an extra 25%, you're going to see we're not fast, I'm not going to lie to you, but we're also not slow, how a lot of people are running it with the aspect that slows enemies when you hit them with Earth skills, and then using the Umbrous aspect on a ring. You move at a snail's pace, or at least it feels like that when you do that. This, we're constantly unstoppable, so we constantly have basically 150% move speed, and it feels a lot better when we're able to make our way from mob to mob much faster, and that kind of, again, like I said, solves for another issue of this class. And we're taking movement speed and then 3 resistances, and then definitely +3 max evade charges on the boots. And we're taking rubies in all of our armor for the extra health. For our weapon, we are using a 2-handed mace. We're also taking rubies in here for more overpower damage. And then we want overpower damage with werebear skills, damage to crowd control, because that will help with a very important rare or legendary node in the Paragon board. And then the last one, you can either take willpower or core skill damage. Both pretty equal. Core skill damage does a little bit more output, but willpower also helps you do more overpower damage. So I don't know why the guy keeps going to sleep. I feel like it hasn't been that long. But you can go with either, and then we're using the shockwave aspect on here to massively bump up the damage of Pulverize. Now over here we are using Banished Lord's Talisman, like I mentioned before. Most important thing on this is to really try to get that number at the bottom there as close to 120 as possible. This is obviously a perfect roll. This is basically almost a perfect roll across, except resource gen is a little bit lower. But definitely try to get that number as high as possible. And this will actually be the 6th way we overpower. And so it's not as good as like this is on Hoda, because I believe that only takes 5 smashes, or every 5th smash you overpower. Where this, we have a spirit cost of 38. And I've done this math once before. It's either every 8 or 9 casts we will overpower. But I'm going to do this real quick. Sorry. Okay, so it's every 9th cast. So after 8, the next one will overpower with Banished Lords, which paired with all of our other overpower ways isn't really that bad. And then 4 rings here. Want the same things on both. We want critical strike chance, damage to crowd control, and max life. And then the other one, I have crit strike damage with Earth skills on both. However, you could also, like something like physical damage or something like that would also work, or overpower damage would also work well on these two. Just something to boost your damage for the other affix on these. And then on one of them, we are using retaliation, so we do more damage based on the amount of fortify we have, and we are using rampaging werebeast to get that increase to our Grizzly Rage, and then also have it increase our critical strike damage as well too. And what you're going to want to do is, so you're going to have 3 resistances down here. You're going to want to take the other 2 and use those. So in my case, poison and cold, and then throw in some more armor in the other one, even though we don't really need it, like I mentioned. So that goes over pretty much everything here. Now let me drag the Paragon board over. And this is including the new Tears of Blood glyph, which you can see right there. We are using Spirit for crit strike damage. Here's where we have our Tears of Blood, able to get a bunch of willpower, as well as, we don't really care about this as much, as more damage while in werebear form, which is very nice. We are coming over here for Ancestral Guidance to do more damage. And then we're using Dominate over here for increased overpower damage. Then we're going, over this way, so we're able to hit these requirements. We are using, what are we using here? We're using Werebear here, and then we are using, we're grabbing the Max Life and the Nature Magic skill damage, and we can grab Nature Magic again because it turns it into an Earth skill. We do have Survival Instinct over here, and then finally up here, which is the big thing and the big note I was talking about with the crowd control, is Earthen Devastation. So again, we turned it into an Earth skill, and we increase our critical strike damage multiplicatively by our damage versus crowd controlled enemies, which is huge, and that's why I actually have this maxed out currently at 40. And then our final glyph here is going to be Exploit, and that is, we're just taking enough just to make enemies vulnerable so we can do more damage to them. But that is the Paragon board. It's only 5. I feel like I usually have 6, sometimes even 7. But actually that's not true. It's depending on class. I feel like for Druid it's usually either 5, maybe 6. For something like Rogue it's usually like 6, 7. I think I've even had up to 8 at one point doing something nuts. But that is the Paragon board. This will all be in the description, the link to this that has all the gear, skills, and the full Paragon board with the Tears of Blood in there as well too. So now before, let me put this back in their little crate here. Before I go into some Nightmare Dungeon gameplay and show you kind of how the build works, there is something I want to show with actually the Pulverize mechanic. So if you hit from back here, you are just hitting them with the shockwave from Pulverize, which you get from this aspect. If you actually go too close, like if I'm right on top of this dummy, you're actually only doing the damage from the Pulverize and not the huge, you can get up to 200% damage from the shockwave. But if you go about right here, you can see the 2 numbers pop up there. Again, you see the 2 numbers, 2 actually different overpower numbers. I'll do it again. So if you kind of get in that range, obviously you can't, rely on that for mobbing, but especially single target, you will double dip on damage. And if you can get, now I can't get a crit for the life of me. Let me kind of build up some more. You can see with the 2-second cooldown, how easily we're able to build up spirit. If you can, I can't get a crit, but yeah, if you can, that was 1 crit, but if you can get double crits, you can do some huge damage against single targets. and it actually, there's a double overpower crit. You saw the 2 orange numbers pop up. But that is kind of a little bit of a hack there to use against single targets, which is one of the class's weaknesses. So with all that being said, I think that's everything I wanted to go over. I think I did mention to you guys, this is actually my second time recording this video, that my glyphs on this character are actually the lowest out of all of them, but I want to get it out. So I have this tier 97 instead of, well, usually I'm about, because I can't just pick to choose 100, but this is a tier 97, so it should compensate a little for my glyphs being a little lower, but it should basically be the same. So we're going to do, I guess we're actually getting an increase to physical damage, so it's really going to compensate for it, but we're also missing out on, you know, a bunch of damage here with this, or with the critical damage, and a ton of overpower, because this scales up very, very high. It's at 31.7. I think it goes all the way up to 40, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll have a bunch more overpower from that. So yeah, we're going to run this one and just show you guys how it works. And I'll kind of walk you through the kind of gameplay loop and what we're doing. It's obviously, if you've ever played Pulverize before, it's one of the simpler gameplay loops. But there is a couple things we're doing. Like I said, watch when we use the Grizzly Rage and we run out of spirit, using the trample in order to get more spirit, because we can't go unstoppable again and get the benefit from Tibalt's Will. And another thing too is, before I start this here, so there will be times where it doesn't feel great. It feels like you're doing no damage when like all your overpowers go down, even though we have all these sources, and you kind of just got to weather the storm a little bit during that time. So a great way to do that is Debilitating Roar, which will keep you alive. And then you can also trample enemies into walls, and that'll stun them. It'll give you a chance to kind of, you know, get those overpowers back up. But once we're grooving, we're pretty good. But you'll probably see like once or twice per dungeon that does happen where I feel like you're doing no damage. But we don't have too much of a problem with that, and we're able to clear everything pretty good. So let's jump into this and show off the gameplay. We actually have massive health pool too, which is very nice. And we have, like I said, massive uptime on our Grizzly Rage. So we just kind of pop that right away. We don't really save it for like an elite pack or anything like that, because it comes up pretty often for us. And we're also getting we're getting spirit regeneration on kill too. So when you're mobbing, it feels pretty good. And then obviously we're able to use that kind of Tibalt tack that I showed to get more spirit when we're doing single target. And I believe this one definitely has a boss at the end that I'll be able to show it off on. So kind of, like I said, very easy gameplay loop. You can see I'm saving my Debilitating Roar because I haven't come into too much damage yet, or too much danger yet, but that'll save your ass basically every time. It's crazy. It's 70% damage reduction from enemies near you when you get it off. So if you ever find yourself in trouble, just cast that and you're pretty much good to go. Like there, I got a little bit low, so let's cast it. You can see this big pack. See, this is one of those times, that wasn't too bad, honestly, but you can see there's a couple hits there where I wasn't really doing too much damage, but then, you know, once I get up and going again, I'm just wiping the screen every single time. So as long as you're able to kind of weather that little bit there, and this is the best way to do it, I found I have very little kind of downtime on when it feels crappy like that, but that's definitely the way you're going to want to do it. And you can also, one of the advantages it does has over another build like a Hoda Barb is you're actually able to attack from a distance, which, you know, with this supposedly being so hard, and there's the damage reduction in this class not being like anything insane, that will actually be very nice to be able to attack from a distance, I think. And like I said, you can see the power of this build. This thing's very strong, and it's the strongest build that I can make for a Druid, and I hope you guys enjoy this. You see, even with just not everything maxed out, obviously you're getting a little bump here from the affix on the dungeon, which I didn't realize beforehand. People will probably think I did, but you know, our overpower damage is pretty damn good. And again, that's without our glyphs leveled up, but we are getting that little bonus, so it'll probably about even out. But also, a lot of these are without double dipping it too. And you can see when we double dip, I think I've hit close to 30 million on some when I've gotten double crit overpowers. Obviously with that Banished Lord's Talisman, you know, helping. I did not mean to do that. Helping a lot with that. we see, but we're constantly putting up, numbers in the millions. Pretty much every hit almost that we're doing, we're putting up numbers in the multiple millions. Obviously not when we're not overpowering, but even then we're putting up like 400k, and we're only going to get a big increase in damage with the Tears of Blood glyph, but obviously the monster health is going to go up as well. But like I said, this is a tier 97, and we are just absolutely cruising. You can see there's a big kind of elite pack there, so we can cast Debilitating Roar, move out, kind of use our trample to stun them, and then like I said, you don't want to get too close there because you'll end up not actually... Oh, seriously? Okay, that's completely my fault. I died by the little thing that blew up. God damn it. I'm going to keep the video rolling. RIP if I was hardcore, but I'm not, so we'll keep the video rolling. But I actually did a good job in the exact situation I was explaining, then decided to run into the explosion and basically kamikaze myself. So that was unfortunate, but you can see there's only, like I said, been a couple times where that happens, and we're able to weather that pretty easily. And now here we are coming up on a boss. We're going to pop this so we can fortify some. We're going to evade through them, and then we're going to try to get as many double dips as possible. I didn't mean to do that. And now I'm not getting any double dips because I messed up. And now my bossing is going to end up looking terrible. But you can see the bossing is definitely a weak point, but I'm also not getting any RNG on my side. There you go. See, you get a big one. And there, then we finish him off with another big one. So I think we'll be able to clear the boss no problem. That was honestly one of the worst case situations because one, I didn't come in with full fortify. Two, I messed up a lot and wasn't getting not even just the double dips, but I wasn't actually getting the shockwave portion. So I was only getting the, much inferior, just regular Pulverize hit, which stinks. But yeah, I think this build is pretty awesome and about as good as... Let me get some more overpower damage. Very nice, thank you. I think this is about as good as you can get a Druid build this season. I think this thing can actually be competitive in Abattior of Zir. Like I said, I really did everything I could to push this to the max. You can see I can do Spirit Regen, and then this is going to go away pretty fast. Bang, again, basically back to full Spirit. That's really the thing that's going to make this thing shine. And I know it's unfortunate if you already have that leveled up. It's kind of dumb you can't unlevel it because there is situations. I would actually kind of like that with my Barb too, to have it only be 2 seconds. But unfortunately can't do that. So it is what it is. If you're able to not level it up, if you have a newer character or something like that, or you're making one for the event, I would definitely suggest that if you're going to run Pulverize. But if not, it wouldn't completely ruin the build at all too. It would just make the single targets a bit harder. So that is the build. That is the Druid build. We have one more coming up. It is going to be Rogue. I've put a ton of effort into these, from leveling up the characters to getting all the gear to putting together the Paragon boards and testing things and everything like that, and trying to push these builds to the max. So I'd really appreciate any support you guys could show, because this really did this kind of endeavor of doing one class for or one build for each class for the Abattior of Zir was a pretty big undertaking for me, and like, this isn't my full-time job or anything like that. So any support you show would be greatly appreciated. I'm sorry for rambling on at the end, but I'll see you in the next video. It's been the Butcher, and I hope you guys enjoy.